Today I am installing fog lights in the Interceptor utility. I'm also going to be switching out my grill and replacing it with a civilian Interceptor, and going to be getting rid of the police lights in there. So it's a little time intensive to pull this bumper, but it's not too bad. Currently I know for sure that you need a 10mm and a 5.5 or 7/32. So to remove these little tiny screws is technically a 5.5 millimeter, but a 7/32 is going to work. Then you got 10 mil, 10 mil, 10 mil. Looks like there's some of these little Phillips plastic fasteners which are always strip out. So a good trim tool would be useful. You just have to pull this fender liner back enough that you can get to, there's two or three 10mm bolts on the inside of here going into the fender. So you just need to get this pulled back enough and this popped off enough that you can get access in there. There may be some other screws in there that, it's been a while since I've done this. So anyway, so you do that, and then on the top here, there's several 10mm. I think some of these are a little bit longer, so keep in mind which are the longer ones. I think they might be the inner ones, but I can't remember right now. Then a clip here, clip here. Same thing on the other side, and then there's going to be a series of, I think there might be 8mm up underneath on the under bumper. Now I've got a skid plate, so I've got three really big 15mm bolts, at least three. There might be some in the back. Haven't pulled that before. And then my push bar is held on with T45 Torx. So a lot of bolts to come off on this, but I'm just gonna start getting into it. It's a lot easier if you turn your tires all the way in one direction. Anyway, so I'm gonna get going. All right, so I've gotten all of this pulled back. You don't need to replace any of these or remove any of these screws. Those will be when we're replacing this. So you just have to get this out of the way since it attaches to the rest of the fender. You only have to go to this point. If you keep going further, like I did on this side, this lip that slides in underneath here and held on with these white clips, you're gonna have a real fun time getting those back on. So I'm gonna have to kind of finesse this when getting this side back on. But you see there's these guide pins that go up into those holes, and so once you get it all in bolted, you get these three 10mm bolts, and the heads of the bolts are up under the fender. So you have to fish your hand up under this mud flap up here, and then have the socket going down like that, and then untwist it. Luckily, once you get them started, they're pretty easy to take the socket off and untwist by hand. But after you get to this point, you just push down like this on both sides, and the bumper should come off. So now we have the bumper off. There's a few harnesses. I have the lights into the grill, so there's that harness right there. And then there's a harness here that goes to what looks like the ambient or the outside temperature sensor right there. And so there's only two wires. Here it is. Two wires that were going into this harness. Otherwise, if you had fogs, there would be more wires, I believe, and they would plug in there, but obviously mine doesn't have that. So, and they don't seem to be tucked up anywhere. So I'm gonna have to hardwire these fogs in myself, which is fine. I'm gonna go ahead and take the bumper inside to work on it because my wife's out of town, so I can get away with it. Okay, so pretty much we've got at this point. We need to remove these, the blanks for the fog lights. Now you maybe have been wondering if you can just keep your blanks and cut out where the fog lamps would go. Not really, because here's the replacement ones I got. These are aftermarket, so they probably won't fit up quite as nicely as factory. But if you look at the difference, this one has a mounting point here, a clip point there, mounting point there, and a mounting point here. which this one has none of those. And so unless you get really janky with how you fasten it in here, this isn't gonna work. So you do have to change those out. Additionally, the fog lights themselves, this is another one I got aftermarket. I think it was about $100 for the lights, and I think $50 for the pair. So $100 for the pair of the lights, $50 for the pair of the bezels. And then also, for the lights, I just got these that will plug in. These are H10 plugs. And so they will just plug into my fog light, and that way I can build my own harness to wire everything up. So that's what you need as far as installing. For removing these, there's these 2 Phillips screws right here. If you didn't know where to remove them, there they are. And then there's these retaining clips all the way around it. So I'm probably gonna have to unbolt or unclip this part as well, just to get some access. But what you do is I take a big pick tool like this, or a flathead screwdriver or something, and you come in here and you release each of these clips, and they start to work their way out, but there's a lot of clips. So I'm gonna get going on that. Okay, so I've got it all wired up now. So the way I've got this is that I've got wires running here, and I put them in a loom all the way across that just follows this temperature sensor all the way up here, and then it tees off, well, it tees in rather. So they're on the same circuit, and then they just come to these 2 spade connectors, which will plug in alongside here. And then I've got those long leads right there that will run to wherever I'm going to do the wiring, but I'll do that another day. But you'll see that in the end of this video. But for now, I'm just gonna try to get this on tonight. And that's what it looks like with the fogs and the new grill. So came out looking pretty good. So once again, this is a switch from a Explorer. They're different from 2013 to 15, well, 2011 to 15, and then 2016 to 19. They're 2 different versions. This is the 16 and newer one, obviously. The plugs will not line up. So if you have an 11 to a 15, you want to make sure you're getting one from 11 to 15. It's more of a square plug, where this one is more rectangular. So you want to have the right one. And here's the part number I'm using right there. And so pretty much the pinning for this is not set up right. So right now, if I push the dome lamp, nothing happens. But if I hit the fog lamp, it turns on the dome lamps. So the pinning is wrong on the Interceptor plug for this Explorer harness. And so we have to flip them around a little bit. So pretty much, if you look at the back side of this plug, you'll notice that the outer 2 on each side, these empty holes that no wires are going into, those are empty, and those should stay empty. So there's a different amount of holes. So if you count on this side, you know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 2 rows. So 16 holes for pins on the plug. But if you unplug it and then count, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 rows, so 12. So the outer 2 of these plugs don't do any, like, even if you pin something in it, it won't make any kind of contact. So when you're counting, just don't count the outer 2. Okay, so pretty much what we have to do is relocate, and this is to get the interior light to actually actuate when you push that, instead of the fog light doing it. And then it will also free up the fog light hole so we can wire it to the BCM. So pretty much we're gonna take this and we're gonna pop off this white cap. This is the retainer for the pins. So we're just gonna remove this guy altogether like that. Now you need to get a depinning tool or something to go up in that little void up here and depress the little tabs that are holding these pins in. And what we're gonna do is relocate this second on the bottom row from your perspective, the second wire to the right is gray right there. We need to pin it to this, second from the right empty hole that has nothing in it right there, right above that white wire. So we have to relocate it over there for that to work. Then this gray one will be that where this hole, or where this gray wire is going in, that hole is the button for the fogs, and that will run to the BCM because currently there's no wire running to the BCM to trigger the fogs. So I'm gonna go ahead and depin and then make sure that works. So now, as you can see, that gray wire's on the top left. Technically it's 2 in, but like I said, the pins in the actual pins inside of the switch, there's not even pins that populate the 2 outside. So anyway, I have it switched over. Now if we look at our interior light dome switch, you'll see that it's now working correctly. And now, of course, this switch does nothing. So we're going to have to pin that one we just removed it from, that, third from the right on the bottom, in between the 2 purple wires. That is going to go to our PCM that will trigger the fog lights. Now, unfortunately, this part's gonna be really hard to film, so I'll try to throw up some diagrams, and you're just gonna have to kind of get under here and try and get a feel for it yourself. But if you kind of get a perspective of where I'm at, I've dropped this panel down just so you can see it a little better. And if you look down in here, you'll see where the fuses and stuff is. That's the body control module. That's what we're trying to get to. The bottom left plug of the BCM is what we're having to remove here. I'll try to fish my phone up so you can see. But as you can tell, it's a real cluster in here. Ooh. So this is the bottommost plug, and this is the plug we're removing right there. So undo that plug and try to pull it down a little bit, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so here is the plug. And the door is going to chime at you a bunch. So what I would recommend doing is what I already did, is take a screwdriver and push it in and close this. Just remember to undo it before you are finished, or else it's going to chime in your ear the whole time. So anyway, we have our plug, and there's 2 banks of wires. There's this white bank and the black bank. So we got our white bank, black bank. Both of these slide out. There's a zip tie up here that I already cut off. Right here that I cut off that binds them to this housing. And then there's these little tabs. There's this little tab right here for the white bank, and then the tab right here for the black bank. You put your little flathead screwdriver and pry in there, and then pull on these wires, and we're gonna pull out the black bank like that. Now we're gonna go down, and on the bottom row, so the top right row is 1, but we're going to 20. So 20 is this one right here. So if you're starting at the bottom left, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See how it's sandwiched with 2 on each side? That is the wire that we need to put in there, and that will run to the switch where we removed the interior lighting. One of the tricky things with this is that I don't currently have the right pins. If you had access to a junked car, you could cut them and splice it in a wire and then use the factory pins. So I'm gonna have to get a little creative here. So I'm gonna figure this out, and then I'll come back and report. All right, so I got really lucky, and because I'm a little bit of a hoarder, I had some old harnesses from other vehicle wiring, and I was able to find ones that were already pinned. Already had pins on them that were the same size, or at least close enough. And I was able to remove those from those harnesses and just pop them right in, so I didn't have to do any crimping. So into number 20 went this guy, which I think I robbed these from a wiring harness from a rear view mirror from, I think it was a Subaru Forester, like a 2012 Forester. But I think these are pretty common size pins for most vehicles. And then I was able to do the same thing up here And where we removed that gray wire from earlier, now I have this black wire running in. So now all I need to do is, I've already done one side, splicing in an extension wire that will go all the way from that pin 20 in the BCM all the way to this right here. And then you want to plug the PCM plug back in. So we've got Forscan set up, and I'm going to go out and into my body control module configuration, and I'm going to, in the filter, type in fog, and I'm going to turn on front fog lamps, enable. I also like it that the fog lamps will stay on when my high beams are on. This is also referred to as Bambi mode. So I'm going to enable that. And then I have the fog memory, position memory is on, which is fine. So we're going to hit right. Now we also need to go into the IPC and do the same thing. So I guess first I need to disconnect. Then we're going to go down to our IPC module configuration, play. Then I'll just search for fog. Fog lamps on. And then I'm going to do, we don't want rear fogs, just the fronts. So we'll write. Awesome. Now we'll disconnect. All right, so we've got it all plugged in. There's our little wire going all the way down in there to the BCM. And now, if you watch when I push the fog button, the fogs turn on. And then when I turn on, well, the door's open right now, so it's not gonna turn off that dome light, but the dome light works at the proper switch now. So that is sweet. So, but that's not all. So I need to go figure out the fog situation. So I'm going to turn the fogs on, and then I'm going to go to the front. I'm going to take my probe light, and we're going to test those plugs that we saw earlier and figure out if they are for fogs. All right, so I didn't have the plugs for the fogs after all. So what I've done, we got to get back into the BCM, but we got to get further up. And we have even less access than before. So what I did is I went ahead and removed this trim plate and this metal panel, which was just held on with 10 millimeters, and then a few 3 or 7 millimeters. Now, if we look back at the BCM, right there, all the colorful wires, and you look at the top right plug, this one, I've already unplugged it. I just put it right in there. I'll show on a diagram where it's at. And we look at these two plugs right here, these two terminals. One's for the left and one's for the right fog. All right, so here are the wiring diagrams for the headlight switch and the fog light circuit. This is also where you can see why the dome lights, the fog button wants to turn on the dome lights. Because if you look at this, the power is coming from here. This is a trigger wire. So there's positive power coming through this wire, and it goes into terminal 14, which is the one we repinned. And then if you see right here, there's this momentary switch diagram. When we push our momentary switch that's on the headlight for the on the headlight switch for the fog button, it will close this, which sends a pulse, connects the circuit, sends a pulse to the BCM, which tells them that we want to turn the fogs on or off. But notice how right here it says fog or cargo lamp, and then up here says rear fog lamps, cargo lamp. I believe this might be a typo. It should say rear fog lamps or cargo lamp, just like it says fog or cargo lamp. So the way this works, if you see right here, we have from terminal 20 in this connector that ends in Bravo, comes up through here, but then there's two wires that split in here, and this one comes over here and goes into cargo lamp input, which is the button that we want to work our cargo lamps after we switch out to the fog light switch housing, headlight switch assembly. So pretty much I think what this is saying is that this is how it would normally be, but if you didn't have a fog light button, it uses this terminal, this number 14, which we already repinned, to control the cargoes when the fog light option is not present. And that's why we had to remove pretty much this wire right here and relocate it over here to terminal number 2. So now when we hit the cargo lamp, it comes over here and then connects. Okay, so after we've ran the wire from the BCM and put it into terminal 14, now if you go into Forscan and enable, you should be able to, when you push this button, the fog light indicator will turn on. And you gotta turn this on in the BCM and in the speedometer. I'm forgetting the module name right now, but okay, so that's how that works. So power comes in through here, goes to the switch. Once the switch connects, it completes the circuit down to the ground, and then it triggers. Then, if we look at kind of a more zoomed out version, this is a simplification of the headlight switch, with the only applicable fogs, because this is the fog diagram. And so this is the same circuit right here. Power comes out of 20, goes down into here, 14, there's our switch, negative, completes the circuit. Now, after the signal is received by pushing your button, it's received in the BCM, it should trigger the opening of this circuit, or I guess the closing of this circuit, putting power through here and here. For whatever reason, the Factory Explorer wiring diagram is that the left and the right fog lights have their own circuits. Don't ask me why, it's kind of weird. But anyway, so it should trigger these on, and then just go straight through the light, and then they come back and join up, and they ground out right here. Okay, now in theory, if you get this all wired up right, like we showed already, and then you turn it on in Forscan in the BCM and in the speedometer, then it should just work. It should put power through here. But for whatever reason, I cannot get it to put power through. I can get it to show the fog light indicator, so I know this trigger is working. I know this circuit's good. But for whatever reason, I'm not getting any power out of 12 or 5 in this 2280 Golf connector. And I've tried just about everything to verify, and I'm getting continuity, but I'm not getting power. So it might be a simple mistake I'm making, but I just can't figure it out. So instead, what we're doing is we're going to use a relay like the 2011 to 15 Explorers do. And when we push this button, it's going to trigger a relay, which will essentially illuminate this whole portion of the wiring diagram. So we'll have a relay over here that's tied into this wire. So we'll cut this wire right here. And then the one wire will go into the relay, the other will go out. And when we push this button, it will trigger it and it will send power over to these fog lights, which I will have joined together. There's no point of having two separate circuits for fog lights that will always ever be on at the same time. So, long story short, that's my logic here. Hopefully this wasn't too boring, but I wanted to explain my logic behind this. Now, if you're able to get this to work, please let me know in the comments what I did wrong, or maybe it's just an issue with my BCM or Forscan. I do think that probably the most likely reason it's not working is because the enable feature in Forscan isn't changing the right blocks in the as-built, but that's the best I can figure. So instead, this is the module that I've come up with to bypass it. And so this is just a simple little module that you can get on Amazon. It's not too expensive. And then I've created a housing for it. And so pretty much the way this works is there is several wires here. These two main wires, these two main wires with only two terminals on this side is powering the unit. That's all it does, is it puts power to this unit to make it work. It doesn't add power to the relay as far as the switch power, but all it does is power this. So this can be hooked up to anything. Then on this side, in the middle one, we have the common in. And that would be essentially your power from the battery, or your whatever your power going to the fog lights before we manipulate it with the relay. And then there's two sides. There's the normally open and normally closed. And this one up here is the normally closed. So let's zoom in a little bit for you. So pretty much what's going to happen is when you turn the car on, normally the circuit is open. I guess normally open, so which means it doesn't work because there's a break in the system. So we'll have our power coming in, but it dead ends because the system is open. But then by pushing this button or using this trigger wire, this white trigger wire, we then activate the relay, which sends the power out this one because it closes the circuit. And then this upper wire here is going to be going to our fog lights. And then the fog lights on the negative side, the black wire will you can just run that to the battery or to a ground. So long story short, that's how we're going to do it. And then this trigger wire is going to go in between where we severed on this connection. And so that way we're going to be able to utilize our factory fog light button without having to do all of this, try to figure out all these issues, and we don't have to add in an additional switch. So this is going to be the most clean option. Nobody will ever know that it wasn't factory just by looking at it. Okay, so this is as far as I've gotten, and for now it's probably as far as I'm going to go. So I've been able to get it to mostly work. If you notice, and I already showed this earlier, this is that wire. I've since cut it and spliced it together for demonstration. So in theory, imagine this wasn't cut yet, so something like that. This is that wire we added in that goes all the way to the BCM. It's the trigger wire for the dash fog light. So it's connected right now. If I push the button, the fog indicator turns on.
Phone disconnected.
But it doesn't turn the fogs on. Now we've got our new little module right in here that I've installed in there. And I'll post up a wiring diagram. And also, if you need one of these to make your fogs work, I'll list these up for sale with the full assembly and the housing and everything, and it'll come with a wiring diagram. But anyway, so this has a very small positive signal coming through it from the BCM. And then when you push this button, it completes the circuit and grounds. So this means this is a negatively switched switch. And then if we disconnect this, we're obviously not going to get the signal to the BCM to turn the light on. But if we connect this to the trigger wire, there's two trigger wires. There's a positive, which would be this one. So this is a signal to our new module. So it does the same thing that this wire was doing, but instead of signaling on the BCM, it signals on our new little module. And then this is the negative side of it, which you don't actually need because this wire is now taking this one's place. So now this has become negatively switched, but for the module. So we turn it on, now listen. Well, and see, I guess, because you can see that light. So you can hear the relay turning off and on. And so that's making the fogs work right now because we've got power coming in. Power is coming in right here. This wire is coming from a fuse box that I installed underneath my dash. You can go back or underneath my center console. You can go back and look at my center console fuse box install for auxiliaries. That's where I have these wires going to power this assembly and to put power to the fog lights, and they go into this module. You turn the button on and it will reroute the wire or the power down to the fog lights. That's the conundrum. So we've got it working, but now that our fogs are working, when we turn it on, yeah, we can hear and we can see that they're turning off and on, but there's no fog indicator now because this isn't hooked up. And you might think, hey, well, why can't you just hook this up too? It shorts out our little relay there. So you can't, because this is positively switched. So this is, you're pretty much putting positive power to positive power, and that does not work when they're coming from two different sources. So anyway, that's kind of the conundrum we're in. You can't have both. Now, of course, it's more important to have the actual indicator or the actual fog lights working. So this is kind of where I'm leaving it for now. I think if I added in another module or a bi-directional relay or something, I could make this work. But really, it's not that important. When you're using fog lights at night, you'll know when they're off or on from being inside the cab, and they're not bright enough to really blind people during the day. So as much as I would love to get the indicator to work, I just don't think it's gonna happen. I might dink with it a little bit in the future, and if I do, I'll post an update video. But I've got a lot of other stuff I wanna do. It's a little bit more important than that. So if you find a solution and actually test it yourself, because I've tested a bunch of ideas, like putting a relay in between these two that will activate that one as well, except for there's not enough voltage going through these because they're just trigger wires, signal wires. There's not enough voltage to trigger. But anyway, so that's how you can get the fogs. That's a lot of work for a very minor mod that I don't think a lot of people even use their fogs anyway, but I just kind of want to see if it was doable. So if you want to do it, you will need a module like this, unless you can get your Forscan to work. And please, if you figure out what I did wrong or why my Forscan wasn't working, please let me know. But I do think it's just a Forscan not fully communicating with the fogs or the BCM fog setting. So if that's the case, there's nothing we can do about it. And if you guys have any questions or need any help with your projects, if you need wiring diagrams, stuff like that, I've been getting so many questions on the comments about different projects and different little questions. I get emails. It's getting hard to answer them all, or having the time to answer them all. If you have any questions, you can, I started a Patreon that you can actually message me directly. There is a monthly membership subscription just to kind of help cover my time, but it's pretty minute. You can just cancel it when you're done, when you get the help if you want, or you could just join and support the channel. I also started a Connect, so if you wanted to like video call me and show me the issues you're having, I could respond that way. I'll put both those links up in this video. I don't know if I'll keep those up for very long. I kind of doubt that there's that much of a demand for it, but it might be easier if you really need help. I also can't guarantee that I can help you, but I can at least send you wiring diagrams and give you the advice that I might have. Anyway, hopefully this video was somewhat helpful or at least informational for you, and we'll talk to you next time.